Uh, uh, to people at home, if you're enjoying this, right, or again tolerating it, one way or the other, hit that follow button, right? Head over to the channel, hit that follow button, make sure notifications are on, so you know I'm going live. We do this all the time. So yeah, also consider subbing to the channel, right? Supporting this community, keeping it up and running. Need your help to make that happen. So consider subbing, getting subs. One other thing, very quickly, we will have a channel update after Reverie, right? Channel update. We don't do that very often, but like important channel update. Stick around for that. All right, very important. So if you don't do that, then you won't know what's going on. So keep that in mind. All right. And also just one last thing, hit up our social media. We got Twitter, where we tweet things occasionally. I've like barely been doing it recently, but still follow us. Discord, everything happens in Discord. The soul of the community happens in Discord. We want you to be on Discord. Please jump on in. And YouTube, or you'll find the VODs if you missed anything, right? If you've missed Stardust and Scott becoming best friends today, right? Then you'll find that on YouTube, right? So like, comment, subscribe, and become a YouTube member by hitting that join button, right? Moving
Nothing
on.
personal, Scott, but I may call you a few more names by the end of the night, so.
Racist.
She's
got them written down, dude.
Moving on. Topic 2. Currently, in both Florida and Texas, anti-LGBTQ reforms are being pushed. The Don't Say Gay bill in Florida and the anti-transitioning measure in Texas. Major corporations such as Apple, Disney, and Macy's have come out against these actions, sometimes under the pressure of protesters. Should companies be expected to take a stand on social issues, especially when those social issues have nothing to do with the core mission of the business? When a business takes a stand, quote unquote, how long should they be expected to follow through? So this is not the first time I've argued about this one. I guess I have pretty complicated feelings about this, especially as time has gone on. But yeah, we have a big social issue that's popped up, right? People demand action, if not from their local politicians who may be actually, doing the thing, right? Doing the thing that they hate. Then they demand action from their businesses that they frequent, right? They put pressure on them and they expect them to do something. So is that right? It should be expected. And yeah, we'll go from there. Black American Mate, we'll start with you.
Generally, I expect businesses to be businesses. Like, so a lot of people like to crap on the idea of rainbow capitalism. I think it's nice when it happens, but basically for a business to do this, like, people are going to have to show that it's worth it for them to do something. It's one thing to have an opinion. It's another thing to have that opinion be strong enough that you're willing to, like, make financial decisions based around that opinion. Like, you feel so strongly enough that you, like, are willing to accept, like, make up for Disney, whatever profits they would lose, or all these other companies. So right now, it just seems like people are willing to say they care and they want the companies to do more, but not enough to actually put their, I guess, actual money where their mouth is.
Thank you. Scott.
Yeah, so regarding the bills, I think it's pretty fuck the Texas bill, but the Doesn't Say Gay bill and in Florida, also known as the Parental Rights bill. I think, Disney came out for this. One individual kind of said in a boardroom that was supposedly leaked that that they didn't want to say anything about it because they didn't feel that it was relevant, and then they wanted to keep their head down. And then social media pressure like kind of forced them into rainbow capitalism, which I think we go beyond rainbow capitalism a little bit when the Twitter sphere is full of a bunch of lefties screeching and reeing because a company hasn't said something about something. It's very interesting to me because the way I normally see rainbow capitalism is the idea that you have a company that engages in advertising and marketing towards left-wing people that don't do research and aren't smart enough to realize that a company is a bad company. And then what they'll do is they'll give some donations to a charity that left-wing people like. And then they'll write that donation off on their taxes. So it doesn't matter to them. It's money they either had to pay to the government or pay to some fucking charity they don't care about. And then, all of a sudden everyone's like, yay, Nike and that Colin Kaepernick commercial. Wasn't that so great? but it is shocking that these white shoes don't have the blood from the children that are making on them. It's so fucking clean. And so, I mean, I think the entire thing is a bullshit fucking thing that corporations tend to do. And I think it's hilarious that lefties are so invested in rainbow capitalism and don't actually give a fuck about stopping large corporations or the state from doing anything evil. They just want to make sure that corporations tell them that they're the good guys on Twitter. And it's disgusting. And I really wish that the left would come back and start fighting for truth and justice like they were in the 90s. But instead, it's just a bunch of fucking sheep getting mad at each other on Twitter.
Okay. Well, once again, Scott just can't bring himself to tell us his real opinion on these things. He's awfully quiet. All right, that's okay, Scott. Maybe on time you'll come out of your shell. Thanks so much, Top Dolphin.
Yeah. Who cares? I guess if companies want to participate in rainbow capitalism, like I don't think any of the people who are getting the funding from this actually care. I think it's important that we show that this isn't like a substitute for like real political action, but like the charities that receive money from this, like the people who are happy that like their cause is being like spread, like get good feelings from it. It's not like a bad thing, unless people think this is like a substitute for real action. Also, the idea that fucking businesses like writing things off of their taxes is like a benefit for them is just like you don't understand how taxes work. That's all that is.
Okay, thank you. Lilac?
So I think that
You're awfully quiet.
Oh, sorry about that. I think that the framing of this question mischaracterizes Disney's involvement in other companies. I personally don't think that companies pretending to be good makes them good. I don't really give a shit if they do rainbow capitalism. They want to sell me shit. I get it. What I take issue with is active participation in political action to fund bills that actively harm myself and other people that I love. Like, that is completely reasonable and justifiable to take a stand against. That's not pushing Disney to do something. That's actually saying, hey, Disney, stop. Just slow down. Just keep making cartoons and go about your business. I don't care, but don't fund political bills. And then say, oh, I was forced to take action. Like, nobody asked you to do that.
Thank you. Stardust.
Yeah, I think companies shouldn't be expected to take a stand on issues necessarily. They can probably benefit from taking a stand on issues, but I don't think it should be necessary. And obviously there are going to be drawbacks. I agree with Lilac and what she's saying. They probably shouldn't, if they're not going to take a stand on something, they probably shouldn't be like funding specific political issues either. I think when it's a topic as important as like childhood well-being, companies taking a stand will most of the time always like be a good thing. And while it shouldn't be required, companies have a unique leveraging point. Because they can directly affect the flow of money in a much more direct way than like the average consumer could. It's basically the same thing as voting with your wallet. When the average citizen votes with their wallet, it's not going to have the same amount of effect as like a company would. Also, it probably would monetarily benefit the company. Consumers find that companies that stand up for popular social issues are more desirable, and they'll purchase products from those companies more. And stakeholders in that company may find that that's incentive enough alone, and they should probably do what's best for their company. And also, it affects the company culture as well, right? Like if you have people who are affected by a certain bill or affected by certain politics, I could certainly see a company getting involved because of the company culture. But should it be required? Probably not. Am I going to demonize a company for getting involved? No. You know, it's in their best interest, and it's probably in the best interest of the people that they interact with. So.
Okay. The Duelist.
Probably a little bit in line with what everybody else has been saying. I think it's kind of really annoying and cringe that companies can come out and say certain things. Like if Pepsi comes out today and they say, we support the gays, then Coca-Cola kind of has to do the same thing. And it kind of like leaves it up in the air when one company says something and supports stuff and other things don't. And it's kind of, yeah, it's not great. But the big impact is when people get things wrong. And I think this is a great example of people getting things wrong, because I read the bill and everything that was in the bill on this example, and it seems like a pretty progressive bill. I don't know what was in there before, but
But don't say gay bill. Just want to be sure what you're talking about.
The Don't Say Gay bill. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like 7 pages. It's not a very long thing. There's just one section on that. I mean, I could read it, but if other people haven't read it, then I'll argue with them afterwards. But I don't know. It seemed like a pretty progressive bill to me. I think sometimes companies react to social media outrage a little too quickly. There are lots of examples of people being a little bit too harsh with cancel culture from stuff that they've said 10, 20, 30 years ago. And it's a real shame that sometimes people have this much power.
Thank you so much. Lorna Box.
Okay, so I think the problem with Disney was that what it turned out that it came out that the company had been donating to politicians who backed the bill, and then there was like a backlash, and then they kind of reversed their position. But I don't know, like corporations don't really care that like exclusively about politics. They might care a little bit, but the first thing they care about is money, and part of making money is taking popular positions and going with public pressure. I don't know how much it has to do with them bowing down to Twitter leftists. Twitter leftists that I know at least will uncritically hate every company and every CEO all the time. But yeah, it's not Twitter leftists that convince them to do this. It turns out that it looks like most Americans are against the Don't Say Gay bill. But yeah, I guess we can get into, as far as woke capitalism, I don't really give a fuck about what they do. I think it's maybe kind of cringe sometimes, but I suppose it's better than not doing it, I guess. But like, yeah, like I mean, not exactly gonna like give them my love for or anything. As far as the two bills go, I don't know if we'll get into them, but they both seem pretty shit. So yeah, we'll maybe get into that too.
It's one bill. It's the one bill, and then the other one is like a measure that like basically like a letter from the governor, but
Okay.
still in action. Yeah. Let's go to.
I need to pee again, sorry.
No problem. I mean, maybe a problem. I don't know. Do be.
So firstly, calling the Florida bill the Don't Say Gay bill is headassery. The bill is fine. The fear mongering and misinformation being spread about it by activists and quote unquote journalists is, I think, more evidence that most people shouldn't be allowed to vote. Companies are in business to make money, not to push your favorite social wedge issues. Demanding that these businesses take some sort of action to hurt their profit margin, their employees, and their growth prospects, because you're upset that teachers won't be confusing kindergartners about still up for the debate gender issues, that even grown-ass nerds who come onto these panels struggle to understand, just seems like entitled pearl clutching that we should ignore.
Oh, DB, my prince, my hero as always. Oh boy. Let's go to the open panel, please.
Okay, I'll be the dumb person who says that they like don't know, because maybe I only read articles. I didn't take the time to read the bill, and everything I'm saying about the bill, because I feel like other people should be smart enough to like summarize things. But every article I've seen related to the bill is states that like kindergarten through third grade, I think you can't mention anything regarding sexuality, sexual
I got
orientation.
I got it right here. A school district may not encourage classroom discussion about sexual orientation or gender identity in primary grade levels or in a manner that is not age appropriate or developmentally appropriate for students. There it is.
Yeah, I want to hear what you thought it was progressive.
But
Wait,
wait,
one second.
whole bill.
No, wait.
It's
Let
not
me
saying-
respond, Scott, really quickly, because Prime,
Okay.
you just read a previous version of the bill,
Mhm.
right? The newer version, because
miss
there
it?
was that question too, like, what do you mean by discussion, right? So they specified lessons. A school can't have lessons about sexuality and gender identity from and also there's a question about what primary grade level meant, right? So they made it specific kindergarten to third grade. That's what
Yes.
they're talking about. Right?
What did they
Cool,
say?
but where's the progressive part?
Wait, hold on.
Can
Wait,
you
wait.
send me the updated text?
I
Because
will,
I
I
missed
will.
it apparently. I apologize.
Yeah, no problem. No, well, this is like the media malpractice I'm talking about, right? The misinformation. They make all these claims about it, but they don't fucking link the bill, right? It took me like half an hour to find the fucking thing. And then when I found it, I made the same mistake you did, Prem. I found a previous version, and then I had to find the newer version that had the updated language, right? So it doesn't say you can't mention sexuality or gender identity in the classroom. If the students are talking about this, it's totally fine. If the teacher responds to their questions about it, it's totally fine. They just can't have lesson plans or like curriculum surrounding this from kindergarten to 3rd grade. That seems totally reasonable.
Got you, but I'm asking the duelist what he said. This is a progressive bill, means that it's
Yeah,
advancing.
the bill
I'm
actually
asking what is
has
advancing the conversation.
Sure. The bill has 7 points in it, and all of the other points, including this point, are basically just giving like parents a little bit more rights of what's happening to their children in school. So they go over if there's any changes in the child's like mental health or anything like this, that the parent should be informed. Schools are not allowed procedures in which they block informing the parents based on changes of like bullying or mental health or physical health or anything like this. Like this entire bill, all of the 7 points in it, other than this one point, is literally like if the school knows something about the kid, they have an obligation to tell the parents about it, and they're not allowed to block that process in any way. And then the way that like I interpret this like this third one is not like, okay, we know all the lessons that people are going to have. Like today we're going to learn about the gays and how good they are in society in this third point. I think it's more in a way of like it protects children from being given bad and misinformation uh, based on sexuality at a very young age. And the young ages we're talking about here are 5 to 9-year-olds as well.
I think what you just said sounded like I get what you're trying to say, but I feel like the other points sound like fodder. Like it sounds like just word filler to get in with the point they really want to get in. Because what is currently in place that says that like if your child was like having suicidal thoughts, that like the school wouldn't like have any obligation to tell the parents about it.
This is
Okay,
doesn't seem like reality.
if you look at the 7th point, it says like each school district shall adopt procedures for a parent to notify the principal or his or her designee regarding concerns under this paragraph, and then it goes out and lists a load of concerns. So they're literally laying foundation for procedures that schools and the districts need to follow.
Okay,
So
so no, this we're a little bit off, but so it's not a progressive bill. It is absolutely a right-wing bill trying to get parental rights back. One of the big things that offset this from the right wing was the story, which is obviously a very much an isolated incident, which was a woman's daughter, January, was transitioned in school, right? And they kept all of the information about her being transitioned. Or he, I'm sorry, I can't remember enough about this story to remember which gender the child, I'll just use they, that they were transitioned from one gender to the other in the school. And the school had specific policies to make sure that the parents were unaware of the transitioning process at school. I don't mean hormone replacement or anything like that. I mean changing their name, changing what bathrooms they went to, making sure that their genders were changed and addressed, right? And the issue that this specific parent had was that they had a master's in counseling. They were someone who had practiced counseling before. Their daughter brought up these, it was their daughter. So it would be they, right? They came to them and they had a friend group, and the parents believed it was in the best interest of the child that they not go through the transitioning process and that they not identify that child the way that that child wanted to be identified, but instead they were taking them to counseling. They were doing all these things. Now, there are a ton of schools before the implementation of this, right? That as we sit, that have policies drafted on making sure that parents are not informed that their children and the school administration and the guidance counselors are supporting their transition. And that is what this bill is specifically. That is why this bill upset the LGBT community, because they said that obviously the portion that is up for debate about, education K-5 or K-3 with the updated language is part of it as well. But the other portion was that they felt that these children might have issues with suicide, or that they may be bullied, or that like sometimes parents might disown them, and that there would be issues in that regard. Which of course the bill covered.
Here's the problem with the bill, the anecdote that you've shared about the bill. This bill is why children need constitutional rights. Because the constitutional right to privacy is completely, there is no precedent for applying it to minors. And this shit disgusting. Is why, here's the thing. Schools are already mandated reporters for issues of abuse, self-harm, situations where children are harming themselves or in danger. They're already mandated for that. Second, if constitutional rights were applied to children, this law would actually have to be narrowed and specifics. The specific issues that this bill actually deals with is related to the student's mental, emotional, physical health, or well-being. That is not narrowly tailored. Your anecdote that you shared, this bill doesn't discuss that. It is a blanket bill that lays out just anything that is related to the child, because if it's not mental and it's emotional or it's physical well-being, and then the teachers are not given the right, they're required, they're mandated to discuss that with the parents. That's not narrowly tailored. And what that means is this isn't going to be brought up in every single, here, don't cut me off. What's going to be brought up is only the cases which further an agenda to tell parents about things that that the teachers at their discretion want to tell parents. They're not going to be talking about just normal everyday kid issues because they don't have time to do that. That's not what this bill is going to be applied for. It's a bad bill, and I don't think it's going to hold up in court if it gets tried.
Do you have any reason why you think teachers should be able to hide any of those things from parents?
What I'm saying is it's not actually related to your anecdote. Is it
okay? But
too broad?
But I asked the question.
And I'm saying that there are already mandated reporters on. Right. If this is actually an issue, they're already mandated to report on that.
You've been quiet this whole time. Don't filibuster on it now, right?
Like, don't accuse me of filibustering. That's not related to my argument.
Really?
No, do you have
attack my argument, not the length of what I said, Mr. 2 paragraphs every time you open your mouth.
Okay, cool. I'll attack the argument. It's an insane idea that you think that that parents don't have rights over their children as the guardian
I said that
or the
children
custodian
deserve constitutional rights of privacy, not that parents don't have rights over their children.
Yeah,
don't misrepresent what I'm saying.
Okay, but by doing so, you would get rid of the custodianship or the guardianship of the parent because you're not informing them. You're allowing the state agents, the teachers, to be able to keep secrets from their parents and do whatever it is that they want to do.
Are you arguing that the mandated reporting laws aren't sufficient to keep children safe? Because if that's the case, you need to amend the mandated reporting laws.
Don't make a
it's a fully separate. It's a bill that is amending a different portion of law. This is not related to mandating reporting. It's creating a new set of standards. If you have issues with mandated reporting and you don't think it goes far enough, then you need to address that specifically.
Yeah, but this is.
I think the bill is bad, but I don't think the kids should have like rights to privacy.
There are specifics and nuances to it.
Because the agents of the state already have your fucking children, and they're already doing things against parents' wills to your children. That's what this bill solves.
Do you support the public school system?
And these are 5 to 9-year-olds as well. That you're advocating for complete privacy from their parents.
I don't advocate for complete privacy.
Hold on.
I never said complete or unabridged privacy. I said a right to privacy that's elaborated at least in some form.
Doobie and Luna Box.
Okay. I need to clarify something. So the portion of the bill that deals with them reporting mental health issues or whatever it is, right, to parents, that's K through 12, right? So that's not just kindergarten through 3rd grade. The kindergarten through 3rd grade thing is specifically instruction on gender identity and sexuality, right? But what I'm curious about is, so I can understand why there's a concern as to, let's say a transphobic or anti-gay parent being informed about, their kid being trans at school, right? Maybe showing up at school and doing the hair differently or whatever the fuck, right? And identifying as trans and requesting those pronouns or whatever. But I think the issue is that, first off, part of this bill is that in cases where teachers are concerned that abuse, neglect, any kind of harm to the child might be an issue from the parents, they are not required to report it to the parents. Yep. So if there's an indication that this parent might hurt this kid, right, might treat them badly if they find out, that they're struggling with their gender identity or whatever the fuck, the school actually doesn't need to report it. But
do they specify? Do they specify why they think like what you need to have your concerns about that to be reasonable, right? So what do you actually need to have like a plausible?
I forget the word they use.
To believe that the parents will be.
It's
that's what I'm not sure about.
It's defined in the statute 3901. If anyone wants to look it up.
Yeah, there's some other statute that they're looking to define that. I guess we can pull it up, but really quickly. But what I'm curious about is, if there's a child, right, and I'm going to call K through 12. I'm going to call them all children, obviously. So if there's a child, right, who's struggling with their gender identity, and at school they're identifying as trans or non-binary or whatever the fuck, and their parents aren't aware of this, right? given that these things, right, being trans, being non-binary, being any of these things, has like a laundry list of potential mental health comorbidities, right? It seems like the parents are in the best position to help this kid, right? Even if currently this kid does not, for whatever reason, feel comfortable talking to their parents about this issue they're having. If they're identifying as trans at school, there's a pretty good chance they have some other mental health problems too that also need to be addressed. And the teachers hiding this from the parents is actually hurting the child, right? So it seems like, and even assuming that any kid who comes out, as trans or non-binary or whatever the fuck, or even gay in like high school, middle school, is actually any of those things, is also a problem, right? Because the kind of gender affirming shit, affirming that sexuality can actually further push people into a phase that they're having and make them feel like this is who they actually are, and it's
What's
not
wrong
something
with
they're going to
that?
get over in a couple. Well, because again,
What's wrong with someone exploring their gender
being-
identity?
there's nothing wrong with that, right? But
Okay.
pushing somebody into that and in a way that makes them feel like this is actually what they are, and they're not just going through a phase, right? I think can maybe solidify that identity. And given that some of these identities are linked to tons of other mental health issues and suicidality and all this kind of shit, it's probably a negative thing to assume that all children who say they're trans are actually trans or whatever the.
Well,
Is
Dibby,
there no
we don't have
way
that.
of-
Dibby, please, no, sorry. We don't have this like basically like anywhere. So the thing with, if you look at like at the rate of children who even get referred for gender dysphoria, like I think it's like up to like 90% of them like don't even come back for like a second or third appointment. So the system actually does a pretty good job of making sure that it's like not transing people who are just confused. Like I think that wasn't like
I'm not
Amsterdam as well.
accusing the mental health. I'm not accusing mental health professionals of like transing kids. Right? I'm saying that if a
Okay.
kid is at school identifying as trans, right, and all their
Yeah.
friends are saying they're trans, and their teachers are affirming that it's trans identity, right, and the parents aren't aware of this, I think that could be an issue because this child might be further pushed into this trans identity that isn't actually them.
But
Well, I
kids
mean,
Yeah, we
play
can
with their
change that, but
identities.
there's like there's like a few things here. First of all, I don't think citing the credentials of the mother in that particular case was very helpful. Like Mrs. Littlejohn, because she basically she said that her child was suffering from rapid onset gender dysphoria, which is not a clinical term. Like it came from like a study that was
In
exclusively
the
polled
UK, yeah.
exclusively polled parents from anti-trans websites. So it's not a very useful.
Yeah, but this isn't
yeah,
like
I don't
some
think this
random
mother, like,
uneducated anti-vax mom, right? This is someone that has graduate training in counseling. But
yeah, and she's
regardless,
also a mother who is ignorant about trans identity. Clearly,
well, I mean,
like,
that's your
rather-
opinion. That's your opinion. But
Don't think that
regardless,
parents have a right to
she
policing their
believes something
children's
that was completely
identities.
against medical consensus.
okay.
Like,
First of all, you could just as easily take the opposite opinion, right? So since you guys are so fucking, let's ignore the topic because I love to fucking white knight for the trans community. Like, let's go there anyways. So let's white knight for the trans community for a minute, right? Let's say you have two parents, right, that are religious but are open to the idea of their child being transgender. But
So-
because the child goes to the school and says, "Oh, my parents, they're religious, like don't tell them, yada yada yada." So now what you have is you have a religious family who the child is scared to open up to their parents and is having one identity confirmed at home, right? And is being forced to wear certain clothing, being forced to not be able to do certain things because the parents are unaware and because the child isn't experimenting in the home because they're afraid. And then at school, they have a totally separate identity. This can cause fucking problems. If we're going to have something that has comorbidities with all of these other fucking issues, like narcissistic personality disorder is a big comorbidity, cluster B personality disorders in general, suicidality, depression, and you can say, well, these are societal. They're not actually from being transgender. Well, can you imagine a more fucked up situation of societal pressure than having one identity at home that isn't affirmed and one identity at school because the school feels like they have the right to decide what we can do with your children while you're here and you don't have the right to know? It's fucking
think-
absurd and it would hurt
So
trans children.
If I can
I,
just,
I think the fact that you're okay.
I just, well, you can go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you if you have stuff to say, Lunderbucks.
It's just quick. I think the fact that you're saying, can you imagine what would happen if a kid had one identity at school and one at home, probably suggests you don't have the research to back that claim up. Because there is research that does back up the claim that even one supportive figure or one supportive environment is better than none. there's like, I can give you research from like the Trevor Project in 2021.
Cool. That's the
that showed
false
that,
equivalency.
Why are you cutting him off when he
that showed
mentions
that
research?
LGBT youth in affirming schools had nearly like 40% lower odds of attempting suicide compared to youth in non-affirming schools, and that's regardless of like what the
Right,
parents
but
are
you're
believing.
comparing
So,
apples to oranges. You're
No,
comparing.
no, he's not.
No,
that's
yes,
not
he is. You
true.
don't
That's
like
apples to
Lila.
apples.
No, no, you guys like really. I'm sorry. I don't know.
Yeah, let
Go
him
back
say it.
to
It's okay.
undergrad,
It's
right?
okay.
Like
Can
it's
you make
real
an
simple.
argument instead of insulting people? That'd be
Well, I'm
impressive
trying.
at this point.
I'm trying. Well, I've made tons of arguments that you haven't been able to contend with this entire debate. But anyways,
Oh, really?
again,
Okay.
right? What you're comparing is no supportive structure versus at least one supportive person. And what the example that I gave you was that there is an identity affirming structure at the school and one that is unaware at home, but is open to the ability of affirming their identity. And the school's policies are stopping this child from having their gender identity confirmed 24/7. As
So-
Do you have any
so-
data that
so you
actually
didn't-
backs that up?
Sorry, please. So you didn't listen to what I said after one supportive figure, did you? I said youth in affirm. I said youth in affirming what?
Right, and then you
Yeah,
said
what-
affirming schools or something.
Mhm.
Yeah, youth in affirming schools had nearly
Right.
40% lower odds of attempting suicide. That's in the school.
Right, but again, you're talking about in the school as compared, like you're not dealing with the analogy that I gave you.
You're making this
The thing-
analogy that you're saying this bill is worth it because this particular hypothetical might be really good, but you're ignoring the harm and the damage that will come from this bill, not just for trans children, but for any child that is in a situation that deals with their emotional, physical, any part of their lives. And also on the comment allowing for teachers to decide if they want to tell parents or not, this law doesn't actually elaborate what kind of protection they have and what grounds they're justified. Like, they have the definition, but the burden of proof, the process of how you prove that it would cause harm, isn't actually supported. So teachers are not in a position of power to actually decide whether or not they talk to parents if they want to keep their jobs.
Yeah, it seems like you took bullet points out of the bill. Read the bill.
I've
again.
read the entire bill. I
well, then
have
guess
it
you
pulled up
weren't-
right here.
I guess you don't understand how legislation
listen,
works.
Dude,
So, Scott, do
again,
you ever
it's very
go to
simple.
anything besides insulting people's intelligence, or is that
Yeah,
the
but
only
that's
thing
not
you
my-
when they're
do?
just
Knock off Mario Brother over
I'm
here.
actually
If my
not
argument is
trying
so
to-
bad, you can attack it.
I am. So I'm not
No, you
trying to
attacked
insult.
me
I'm
personally,
not
but that's not my
trying-
argument.
I didn't attack you personally.
You've
What
only
I'm
read
saying is-
bullet
You
points.
did.
That's
You
not an
only
argument.
attacked
No,
people
actually-
personally, Scott.
actually,
That's
again-
all you do.
Okay.
So what we're
knock it off.
discussing-
Everyone, shut up. Knock it off. Let's
I'll
stay
be quick.
focused on that, on the actual, like, not people's intelligence or their reading comprehensions. Let's try to stay focused, okay? Scott, I want you to reply. I do want to hear from Stardust, and then after that, I'd actually like to jump in and confront Doobie that way. Doobie for something. But
yeah,
Scott, go ahead.
I'll be real quick. I'm trying not to insult your intelligence and assume that you didn't read the whole bill. So what I'm saying is that this is how legislation works. It's almost always vague. And if you read the bill, you'll see that they have years, that school districts have years, not months, not days, years to be able to draft policy that fits with the bill. So when you're saying, hey, they don't have any of these things set up, that's not how most bills are written. Most bills are not specific around the way that a policy is. They have vague policy that says what it was that they want. And then the executive branch, the bureaucrats and the school districts and things like that, then create policies to specifically fit those things, right? That's just how legislation in America works. That's why it's not specific. And that's why if you read the bill, you'll see that they tell school administrations and counties that they need to draft policy to fit the bill.
Policy drafting, sorry.
Yeah, finish what you're going to say, then I'm going to go straight to Stardust.
Policy drafting does exist. I'm very familiar with the legislative process. I have worked as a journalistic intern at the Capitol to do this. I have seen the process. Okay, no, but here's the thing. Just because they say you should draft policy doesn't mean that they are narrow and specifically tailored in how they are instructing that policy to be drafted. Just because a policy will exist doesn't mean that it's going to be a good policy. You can't make assumptions about a policy that hasn't been written. So as this currently stands with the material we currently have, no, it is not specific about the ways teachers will be allowed to use their own discretion in allowing them to not disclose information.
Please, Stardust, and then I'm
Okay.
going to jump in and say something to Doobie. Go ahead.
I just want to say that, like, it's either like saying that, oh, you must have not read this is still like kind of implying incompetence, if not unintelligence. But that's fine. whatever. If you want to be condescending, that's totally fine. Outing somebody before they're ready can be traumatic in itself, right? A lot of the times you're talking about some hypothetical family that's going to be accepting of this child, and a lot of the time, people who come out to their parents are rudely awakened and find out that the parents they thought were going to accept them did not, right? Thirdly, I would rather have a child who at least gets their gender affirmed in one place rather than having that told to a parent and now not being able to have that affirmed in any place, right? At least they had it in the school, but now they don't even have that. And then fourthly, there has to be a way to maybe suggest that a child sees a therapist or sees a counselor without having to out them to their parents. I also have problems with trusting teachers to make this decision when to tell parents that they suspect a child may be transgender or may be gay or something like that, and be able to tell when a parent is going to be accepting of that. You're just not going to know, and I think it's better to leave that decision up to the individual who's going through that struggle. Sure, find a way to maybe suggest additional counseling for them, but it doesn't have to be through the way of outing them.
So I want to. Oh, Black, you have your hand up. Okay, I'll go to you next. Bam, if that's all right. I want, and Lorna Box. Okay, I see your hand up as well. Doobie, I first of all, thank you for letting me know that I was looking at an old copy of the bill. So I much appreciate that. But I've read the whole thing, right? I mean, I've gone through this thing, and it's section 3. And I'll read the language exactly, right? Classroom instruction by school personnel or third parties on sexual orientation or gender identity may not occur in kindergarten through grade 3 or in a manner that is not age appropriate or developmentally appropriate for students in accordance with state standards. Okay. You have implied, and maybe other people have implied that this makes sense, that this is just common sense. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem so bad. Actually, I think it's pretty fucking terrible. So as it stands, of the final language, I don't see anything that is wrong with having a lesson plan where you tell kids that that some kids, right, like who think they're a boy one day may one day think they're a girl. There's no problem with that, because kids actually start thinking about these things when they're young, right? Talking about these LGBTQ issues, and you can do it in an age appropriate way, right? Like, this is the thing that they used to scare parents when we were trying to get gay marriage passed, right? It's like they're gonna have these lesson plans, and they're gonna read books to your kids about like boys kissing boys, and it's gonna be terrible. Your kid's mind is gonna break, right? Like, no, not a problem, right? Like that basically implying that there was going to be fucking gay porn. They're going to show porn to your kids or something like that. Like, this is exactly that kind of fear mongering. So I think that we can actually have those. We can have, and it's important to have those discussions at those ages, at age 5, 6, 7, 8, right? Because those kids are already thinking all those things. They don't know how to contextualize their own experiences. And that's exactly the thing that school should be doing. So no, I actually do have a problem with this bill as it is written currently. Doobie, you can respond.
Real quick. I can show you pictures if you want me to DM you later, PrimeCayes, things that are in school that break Twitch TOS. Just for the record, in case it's just
I was actually
an interesting fetish, but go ahead, Doobie.
I was actually going to mention something similar to what Scott said. So this idea that was all fear mongering, when there are many cases across this country over the years of parents finding books that have like graphic sex scenes in elementary schools, right? Is like recommended reading and shit in the libraries and shit. Not just gay sex, but like even straight sex, right? Kids finding parents finding like books about like sex toys and shit and BDSM in these like elementary schools, right? So it's not just fear mongering. That kind of shit has happened. right? Whether or not you think it's a good thing, we can talk about it. I think it's a pretty
Yeah,
bad thing.
just a real quick
but-
quote, right, from Lawn Boy, right, which was one of the books that was like shocked a lot of parents. Like one of the quotes from that book that was in the school library was, I wrapped my 3rd grade fingers around his engorged salamander. And it was talking about a young boy jerking off a 35-year-old man.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I think
So
So
wait,
you
no,
have-
I'm not. I
sorry,
wasn't.
sorry,
I
don't-
wasn't-
but those aren't lesson plans, right? Right, that what your example isn't lesson plan.
No.
It is
We
a-
were talking
it-
about fear. Yeah, no, I was just saying that stuff is there, but it's
Okay,
not. No, it's
so
not part of
school.
the
The fact
lesson
that-
plan. No.
I think we can agree that sometimes that out of the thousands of books that they have within the school library, that you could probably find something that is objectionable, right? That maybe we wouldn't agree on, but that's not this bill, right? I mean, the bill's more than that, at the very least. Sorry.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I can.
I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, so I'd like to respond. So, I don't know. I think that the idea that like 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds are prepared to like grapple with gender identity issues, right? And transness and sexuality just seems insane to me. I think, and I think just we can acknowledge that a lot of parents, even if you think that they might be ready for this, there are a lot of parents who are not ready for these kids to be exposed to this kind of stuff. And I think that topic specifically, right, sexuality, fucking dildos, whatever it is, right, is something that I think parents should have a say in when their kids are taught this. And I think after the 3rd grade, after they're 8 years old, is totally fucking reasonable. And is especially when this topic specifically gender identity, trans and sexuality, all these things is like so up in the air. There's so many debates about what any of this shit fucking means between like even activists, right, even allies of these groups, right? So the idea that you're gonna be able to teach this to kids in a way that they understand it, you're not gonna confuse the fuck out of them about their own gender identities, seems silly to me.
So hold on.
Well, they're not educated
Again,
enough to
so Ellie Bam next in the loaner box. But we said age appropriate, right? So age appropriate for a 8-year-old, maximum age for this bill, doesn't mean dildo, right? So like there's like it's like a straw man that you're throwing out there.
According
Don't
to
have
who?
to defend it, right? Not at all.
Wait, hold on.
right?
Wait, hold on. According to who? We just told you there that some of these elementary schools have like fucking books where
No,
third
yes.
graders are jerking off
Not
35-year-old
a
men.
lesson plan. Again, still
no
different.
one's supporting that.
Still not
But
instruction.
again,
No one's again. That's a straw man. We're not.
Prime,
we're
age
not supporting
appropriate
that.
according to who?
Well,
You've had people.
Well, no one we
Exactly.
see.
That's what I do this
Books
on.
related
It's
to
not
this.
like there aren't
How are they
educators who've done who worked out exactly this. In fact, we had a discussion about this many months ago about New York. In New York, there was a teacher who had a lesson plans that were showing to students, right? And I think you remember this too, because I believe you were on that stream. Showing to students about sex and sexuality, right? And there was fear mongering all around, like what happened in that classroom, right? And people freaked out, but this woman knew her stuff and had multiple different lesson plans for each individual grade. And then at the oldest level, right, they did talk about like porn literacy, right? But like the high school age kids, right? But like again, the fear mongering went out of control. So again, when we're talking a lesson plan that a teacher can actually speak and say, right? Then that one we can easily define. I swear we could come up with right now. We could do it right here. An age appropriate way of talking about, hey, sometimes boys like other boys, right? Sometimes a girl feels like she's a boy, and that's okay, right? We could just do that right this second, and still have that something that is.
Hey, but what you
useful
just
to
said
those
was
kids.
transphobic, though. A girl feels like she's a boy. This implies that she's not actually a boy, which is actually transphobic.
boy.
So even in here, you're confusing yourself with this shit, right? So again,
think
the idea that you're gonna be able to teach this to children who I don't think are anywhere near ready to approach the subject. I think most adults aren't ready to approach the subject.
Nice try.
So
A
not a-
bam.
Oh, it was so good. He
I
got
feel
your
like-
ass.
I feel like I don't know. I think it's like, well, I understand why when we're in these like online spaces, every time we see these things, we jump immediately to trans people. It's cool. Decentering trans people for a second. I think cis kids, just kids in general, may wonder where babies come from. Like at 7, 8 years old, may wonder like I had my first crush. I had my first girlfriend at 5 years old, like play girlfriend, obviously. But like children do have like children of all like genders and sexualities have like these feelings that they don't necessarily understand from as early as 5 years old, 6 years
Are you
old,
gonna
7
pull
years old,
the
8 years old.
kids are way more sexual than you guys think? Like, yeah, okay, so yeah,
Oh,
kids might be
what the-
curious about what their dick does. We don't need to tell
Um,
them what the dick does because there's a concern that they might go out and try to use it again with
Just
each other, right?
because somebody is
But that-
rejecting
why do we go to
norms and gender
dicks?
also doesn't mean it's transphobic. There's
But-
nothing wrong with rejecting the norms of gender.
But this thing
There's nothing
also
wrong
pushes
with
back
saying,
against the
Not what I
you
said.
may
norms.
be a girl, but you know what? If you want to do boy things, that's fine too.
But I'm saying, why do we have to go that far? Why do we always have to go to trans people? I'm saying this bill also pushes back against like the just stereotypical gender norms we have now. Like it's saying that you can't talk about boys liking girls either. That's like also a part of sexuality.
Yeah, and
Can I
I
ask
don't
you a
think
quick
that's
question,
right.
ma'am?
I don't think that's right.
Can I ask you a quick question, ma'am? I'm just curious. When talking about this bill, should I or should I not cancel my Disney Plus subscription?
I don't
How
know.
is that
I don't like
relevant?
it as a platform personally, but that's up to you.
Just curious.
Well, here's
I
the
mean,
other part of
everyone
this.
should
Like,
cancel Disney Plus for other reasons.
no one's going to be bringing cases and bringing up this bill. If, like, my kid learned that boys and girls sometimes kiss. That's not what this is going to be used for. The practical effects of this will be primarily against the minority.
I get that,
I
but
think it's
I'm saying that this is what it's just that this is the only thing we talk about the bill because we understand like we always jump to the edge cases, but like no one's addressing like the reality is that this bill affects everyone, not just
Yeah, but
the
I totally
very
agree with
small
that.
percentage.
No, I do
Yeah,
agree.
actually.
Yeah.
If
Yeah,
I can, if I
hold
can
on. Let's get
have a
Lorna
moment.
Box has been waiting. Then
Okay.
Stardust. And actually, but Scott reminded me that we actually haven't touched like the core of the question, which is how companies react. Right?
Dude,
and
I'm
we've-
right wing. I just don't know if I should cancel my Disney Plus subscription or not. I never know.
I just, like kids learn about these things in this day and age, like whether we like it or not. Like I first learned the.
You
concept
sound
of
quiet.
gay
You
when I
sound
was-
quiet. Is that just me?
Sorry.
No,
Sorry.
he's quiet.
How am I now?
You're good now.
A little
Slightly
better. Yeah,
better.
go ahead.
Yeah, people are going to learn about this stuff whether you like it or not. Like I first learned the concept of gay when I was 6 in like fucking Dubai, you know, and I really wish there was a teacher there with a lesson plan to tell me that being gay was cool because I probably would have been a better child, you know, right? Yeah, but I think the other problem with this as well is like you keep on like trying to wedge in this whole thing about like, oh, look at this textbooks with dildos. Like it's not about that. It's about lesson plans that are age appropriate as well that wouldn't be allowed. And I'm like, okay, maybe you think it's going to be confusing for them. I don't see the evidence for that. Like when it comes to the question about the one that really bothers me is that they say that you're allowed to hold it from the parents if a prudent person would believe that disclosure would result in abuse or something like that. That just seems kind of vague for me because like in where I come from, like the guidelines that we went by when I was teaching was basically that if a child tells you they're trans, you can like change their gender and all that if like socially if you want to and or if they want to. But the problem was that you should encourage them to get parents involved, but if they don't want you to, that's enough of a reason to hold off and try and put it to later. Because if a child says, I don't want my mom or dad to know that I'm trans, like, it's not worth the risk because there is so much danger involved in outing a child to their parents. Like, the risks of, like, everything bad goes up, like, just in case that parent is, like, not keen on trans people. Like, I think, like there was a study from Toronto that showed, like, half of kids with, like, non-supportive parents had housing issues, like, under the age of 18. So that's the kind of thing. Like, I don't have time to look into 39.1. It's really long, but how does everyone feel about that? Like, would that be enough? Like, if a child says, no, I don't want my parents knowing, like, does the teachers have to tell them anyway, if that's all they have?
I was curious about that. Would you want
why they don't want to tell their parents? And if they say because I don't know if my parents are going to be positive about it, or I do know that my parents aren't accepting of different sexualities or genders, then it would be enough. But if they're just like, I just kind of only want to be trans at school, I don't think that's a good enough reason.
The kind of like
There's this
guideline that we're given
expectation.
here is that sorry, just really quick. One of the things that we're given here is that like kids sometimes don't really want to speak like that ill of their parents either. So I think just like the hesitancy, you can try if they're hesitant to tell you why they don't want the parents to know. That's scary as well. You know, some kids don't want to want you know that their dad's an abuser and shit. So yeah, I think if the kid doesn't want their parents to know, that should be enough because the risk of outing a kid in that situation is just too high. It's not worth it.
So
I think
there's
we're relying.
I have two
No
things on.
kid's going to tell you that they're like, I mean, most people in those abusive situations are not going to come out and say like, yeah, you know, my dad's going to beat me with a belt, like when he finds out about this, right? Like
Yeah,
that's not
but
gonna.
I think
So I have two things on what Lonerbox was saying, and one is prudent person is going to be determined by a judge if this ever became to court. And when you can count on the judge probably assuming prudent means conservative, heterosexual, not accepting of trans rights, then prudent person becomes a weapon for discrimination.
Dude, girl, how many blue pills you
Second,
taking?
hold on. Second, whenever we're going to have a discussion
Harvey,
about
that's not an argument,
children being able to articulate why they don't want their parents to be involved, we have like particular laws for minors for a reason. It's because they don't have the same skills and abilities as adults. And if we're going to hold that as true, then we can't expect them to have the same skills and abilities as adults to articulate. It's kind of like what Stardust was saying, that they can't say, oh, my dad's going to beat me, or that they're not accepting of these things. They may just know, I'm afraid. And I also would argue that if you are in a place where the majority of people, it's a coin flip whether or not they're going to be accepting of a trans child, then I don't think that you could argue and a truly prudent person would tell anybody's parents, because you just can't know what's going on at home.
Would you?
I don't think we're relying on the. Okay, please.
Just I want to add one thing.
Oh.
Like, it's the. I agree with what you're saying, Lilac. A lot of the times, even, and I want to reiterate that a lot of the times, a lot of children will come out to their parents thinking, I live in a progressive household. Of course, they will be accepting. But that initial moment where they come out is actually incredibly painful. Parents don't know how to react the first time, and to have that forced on the child before they're ready to deal with those repercussions is going to be very traumatic.
Absolutely.
Secondly, if we're talking just about sex education in general, if this is a bill that is prohibiting sex education, I don't think that's a good idea, because I think the earlier you start sex education, the more likely you are at preventing sexual abuse, right? You have to know what sexual abuse is to be able to prevent it. Plenty of children grow up being sexually abused, and they don't know that they're being sexually abused. They know that something doesn't feel quite right, but they don't know that they are being abused. And so people need to, there's a way to communicate to children in an age-appropriate way to tell them when somebody is violating your boundaries, it's not right, and you should have control of your own body. This is a fundamental concept that a lot of children don't even grow up learning, right? They don't learn that their bodies are their own, and that nobody has the right to violate that. So
Stardust, I'm glad you agree with the bill. I'm glad you agree with the bill, because all that's in the bill.
I think I'm like literally at the point of a coin flip. Just quick question: is there? And this is a legit question. This isn't like a gotcha. Is there any other anything other than like an LGBT issue where we would apply the same logic to, of like, oh, don't tell the parent if this is going on?
For example, if they are prohibited from even talking about same-sex
nobody's gonna answer my question. That feels like you just
wait a minute. This is going back to the abuse situation. All right, if somebody is being abused, it is not always heterosexual, right? It sometimes can be, and it's somebody that they trust, and it can be same-sex as well. That is why, I mean, and this is not anything against any community. This is just talking in general. Abuse happens. Sexual abuse happens. It's and it's not always going to be covered by what is typically what you would say like is heterosexual, right? So
That's in the bill. That's in the bill. It's saying that you can't talk about sexual identities and that everything must be age appropriate. There's nothing in the bill that stops a kindergarten teacher from saying like, hey guys, these are no places. People aren't supposed to touch you here. And if an adult touches you in your no place, like, you really should tell somebody. Like, there's nothing in the bill that stops that.
I want to legit answer my question before we pass by it though.
Jay?
The lesson plan just says it needs to be developmentally appropriate. There's nothing developmentally inappropriate about teaching children boundaries around certain parts of their body.
Doobie. And then
I wonder why the wording of
Wait,
this.
can somebody answer my question?
Yeah, in my
What, is there
answer
any
to
other time
them
when you wouldn't tell the
is
parents?
probably that it's exactly the same for other things as it would be for gender and sexuality for me.
But I
If
can't
your
think of
child has
any
an
one
issue,
thing
you
that
should
we
probably...
wouldn't tell. Like that you would say like, oh, okay, it's not okay to tell the parents. Like I can't.
No,
like
no.
that's
I'm on the
literally
opposite end.
so
I
I'm
think
saying
it's
that's
okay to tell the
that's my
parents.
determining. I'm saying there has to be something else that we would apply this to.
It's abuse.
Besides just
Anything that
LGBT.
would
kid's
cause
getting-
abuse and harassment. Anything that would cause
a
abuse
kid's
and
get-
harassment, right? So if you think that the
Like if a child was cutting himself, I feel like there's no way on earth we wouldn't tell the
would a
parents.
reasonable person think that telling a parent that their child is cutting themselves cause abuse and harassment at home, right? That's what you're asking for, right?
Possibly, but that's in the bill.
That's in the bill, yeah.
Hold on, but he's just asking me a question, so I'm just trying to answer that question, right? Anything, abuse or harassment that would reasonably cause the parent is going to do this to me, right? Like or maybe like I've changed my fucking religion, right? Like I was a Christian, now I'm a Muslim, and if I tell my parents, it's going to throw me out, or I don't believe anymore, right?
That was a good example. Okay.
Yeah. So okay, Doobie and then Lorna Box.
That's a good example, yeah.
Yeah. So to be clear, what abuse means or neglect means is laid out. It's very specifically, right? It points to another statute that exists. I can post that statute for you guys. It's very specific, right? But I think that going back to what Lilac and Lona Box were saying, I think relying on the judgment of a child who is already struggling with their gender identity, which is an indication that they might have other mental health issues in addition to the problems that come with being a child and their judgment just from being like a child and not having a fully developed brain. I think relying on their judgment, solely without any like other input, is a bad idea, right? I think we shouldn't just say, hey, if the kid says no, for whatever fucking reason, we're just not going to tell the parents. I think you need more than that.
I just
What
want
do
to
you need?
state
Do you
that
need to,
I
like,
didn't
sleep in
advocate
the
for
parents'
relying on the
houses or what?
child. Sorry.
Okay.
No.
I just wanted to clarify that I didn't advocate for relying on the child's judgment. I think even if the child says tell my parents, if the child wants to tell their parents, they live with them. I assume in this hypothetical, like the child can tell them. The school, like if the parents are safe to tell, the child will tell them. If they're not safe to tell, the school shouldn't get involved. So in either case, the school doesn't need to be relying on the judgment of the child because it shouldn't be saying anything.
Or maybe they're afraid to tell the parents on their own, so they'd like a counselor or someone there with them when they tell the parent. Right?
If they're afraid to tell their parents, there's probably good reason, or they have people who actually know their parents, like friends, their family, aunts, uncles. There are people who are more in touch with the situation than people that may have met their parents at parent-teacher conferences, maybe.
Even
that sounds like children have anxiety.
If you know that your family are going to be supportive and all of these things, right? And you know, like 100% coming out to your family and stuff is still a difficult process for a lot of people because it makes it a lot more real than it was before.
And having that forced on you is also, like, again, agreeing with Stardust, having that forced on you before you're ready, even if your parents are supportive, that is traumatic because what it's saying is that you don't get to have ideas and opinions about yourself as a person that are yours. And that's not, I don't think that that's a message we should be giving to people because that's not going to raise people who have actual strong self-identity. That's going to raise people that constantly feel like they need to be protective and try not to expose anything about themselves lest somebody else take it upon themselves to inform people around them.
Yeah, but I think the issue. Wait, one second. The issue specifically with trans people. I don't think this is the case for like gay people, for example. But I think specifically for trans people, or people who might be struggling with their gender identity, non-binary people, whatever you want to call them, right? For this group of people, because there's like a comorbidity with other mental health issues, and it's like a massive comorbidity. Right?
I haven't seen your data for that, but I'll run.
Sure, I can pull it up for you in a bit. But so that being the case, right? That's just a reality, right? If we want to talk about why that is, we can talk about that, but that is just what it is right now. So
allegedly,
that being the case, right? The fact that I'm sure teachers are gonna be aware of this if they're educated on gender issues, right? Not telling the parent that your children are struggling with trans, struggling with their gender identity, when that could be an indication of a ton of other very serious mental health issues that this child needs help for. I think it's fucking terrible.
See, here's where you're going though. Okay, what you've alleged is that they have these comorbidities, for these very severe mental health disorders. If the parents are so checked out, if that's the case, if that's actually true, I don't know that it is, but if that's true, then a child who's struggling with a cluster B personality type disorder, which, by the way, you shouldn't be diagnosing people under the age of 18 with cluster B personality type disorders, because teenagehood, childhood very closely mimics a lot of those same symptoms. But if that's the case, somehow, if the parent can't tell that from interacting with their own child, I don't think that they're going to be a very good or helpful advocate for them to understand their own gender identity if you're alleging that they need the parent's help for that.
Lilac,
Wait, I
I
think
think the issue here-
I want to hear from one box. I'm waiting.
Yeah, I think the problem was like the way that we do it, like again, like the way we do it here, and why I'm like just like not too happy with this answer, but like telling the child's parents is that like what else do you have to go on? Like, so as far as we know here, like I don't see what's wrong with the idea of you're encouraged to get the parents involved as soon as possible, but you should be very hesitant, like if the kid says no. Like and if the kid doesn't want to tell you why no, then I think that should be enough for you to think, okay, I'm gonna try and bring this back up in a week or two and like find out, because that alone it's quite dangerous. And there's lots of other examples. If a child's being bullied, they might not want their dad to know, because their dad will be like, you're not a real man. There's lots of kind of ways this can happen.
The problem. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were done. Go ahead.
One more thing. Maybe I'm just being an idiot, like I can't read. But 3, I don't understand what this means. But like it says, classroom instruction by school personnel or third parties on sexual orientation or gender identity may not occur in kindergarten through grade 3. Then, or in a manner that is not age appropriate. So why are they contrasting like can't be taught in kindergarten through grade 3? Or in a manner that's not age appropriate.
So I think it's
like,
you can't.
That just means that there's a blanket ban on kindergarten through age 3, and then for K through 12, it has to be age appropriate. It's setting
is that
different.
actually what
like,
it means? Because that's bad. That's the fact that it's a blanket ban means you can't go to a 5-year-old and have a plan that's like, some boys like to hold hands with boys like that.
Not as a lesson,
what
but
we're
you
talking
can
about,
talk to them about it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
idea. Is that
your
people
example
don't
right
want your
there is you
5-year-old
can do it. Yeah.
That's like
you
pretty
shouldn't have a
serious
lesson
Your
overreach.
plan
5-year-old
for
should know
5-year-olds about
abuse.
Again, Stardust. That's not
5-year-olds learn
what-
about
that's
straight
not-
Why
relationships.
doesn't abuse
all the
matter?
time, right? Yeah, because 5-year-olds learn about straight relationships by default, right? I don't know why you wouldn't introduce them to gay ones as well.
Because you're talking about sexual identity and sexual relationships, right? You're
It's
saying,
being
well,
straight
okay,
on a
through
sexual
osmosis.
identity.
Hold on a second. You're not allowed to do it for straight relationships either.
Right.
This
What,
bill.
what I pointed out
Bullshit.
being an
But
issue.
that's no bullshit.
No,
I'm sorry. Is
because-
straight
I know
sexual
everyone knows.
orientation?
No, you're not allowed to do it for straight. Of course you are. Of course
No,
you are.
you're
because,
not.
listen,
You're just
right?
pulling shit out of your ass? You're a magician now,
no, Scott. This is what you're doing, and this is what the Duelist is doing, right? Lilac pointed out a long time ago, right, that our society accepts the straight identity, right, and talking about the world. And experiencing the world through a straight lens, so a heterosexual lens. And so so you can talk about these things, right? Like you could say that technically, well, yeah, I guess this applies to all, but how will it be enforced? It will be enforced exclusively if we're talking about homosexual relationships, right? So
That's
yes,
a lie.
you can.
That's a lie.
You can have a lesson plan talking
you're
about.
lying.
Hey,
Wait,
I've noticed. I've noticed that some of you have like boyfriend and girlfriends, right? Maybe you should like just hold hands or something. I don't know. Maybe you should slow down and
The bill doesn't ban that for gays.
Yeah, you could
people
say
either.
that.
No,
That's
you
fine.
on. If
You
you have
can't
a
have
lesson
lesson
plan, if you
plans.
have a lesson plan based around sexual orientation, that kind of the discourse, right?
You can't do that for straight people either.
No,
this
I'm
also
saying that
bans
you absolutely will be. Like that's how this works.
It's about the application.
Yes, the application,
No,
exactly that, right?
it's about lesson
even if it's
plans.
not.
You're not
Yes, I
allowed
know it's about lesson plans. I don't know what you're saying. That I've already said that. I said a lesson plan. I already
Because you're
said
not
that.
getting
Already got
it,
that.
because
No,
it's not
no,
getting
Dude,
because
it's-
that's how. Okay. How are things enforced, right? You can. This is systemic racism all over again, right? Well, the law doesn't say,
God.
right, like that the police should beat up black people, right? So obviously,
No,
there's no systemic
PrimeCayes.
racism in the justice system, obviously, right? No, it doesn't have to say
Dude,
that. It doesn't have to say, hey,
that's such
don't
a
talk
cope.
about. It doesn't have
If
to
a
say
teacher
about
just
don't talk
doesn't like
about
a kid.
gay individuals. Doesn't say don't talk about trans individuals, right? Doesn't have to say any of that. But and you could say just generally just keep these things out of the classroom.
You're-
But
You guys are
if you
spinning a
actually
narrative that is
analyze,
completely
if you
untrue.
actually
literally-
analyze what people talk
Anecdote
about, right?
Andy.
You would find things that would go over the line, but they wouldn't be challenged because we have a heterosexual perspective. That's by default.
You're
PrimeCayes,
literally
it's
doing
about
like the
lesson
horseshoe
plans.
theory to become like the
It
Jordan
said
Peterson of
K-
the
it-
left, talking about how you're doing the same article, whatever it was that Jordan Peterson attacked in
I have no idea
Canada
what you're talking about.
about.
Was it
don't-
not K through third grade that it's completely prohibited?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, lesson
So,
plans.
so you're telling me? Wait, what
as a
did you
lesson
say?
plan.
It's instruction of like lesson plans about these things.
Okay, so then you're confirming that people K through third grade can't learn about boundaries to me.
No,
No.
you just didn't read the bill and you don't understand when
It's
everyone's
sexual
explaining it to you.
relations, right?
No,
Is it
it's
not?
boundaries is
I feel
not
like you're
sexual
just not- I feel like
relations.
you're
Saying
just-
don't
you're
touch
choosing
someone's
not to
If
known
you're
apply it.
place.
talking about abuse, yes, it is.
You are literally making
Sexual
shit up.
relations isn't in
Wait.
the bill. It's
Like, you
sexual
guys-
orientation.
It's sexual
and
identity and sexual
gender.
orientation.
Well, that's what I'm really
Or,
like
sorry,
frustrated about, because you're saying you're against like the lesson plans for sexual identity because they're 5 years old. Like, okay, like we get default sexual identity plans. Like I remember being fucking 4 years old and watching Nala bite Simba's ear and then they fucking shit. Like, okay, we show fucking sex education videos of people shagging at the age of 10. It doesn't result in all the kids going around and ramming each other behind the bike sheds. It's like, it's just
But Loner
again,
Bucks,
like,
that's
well,
the whole
hey,
point
but
of the
if you
name
want-
of this bill.
I think
The name of this bill is parental rights and education. It's not saying children shouldn't have these things. What it's saying is we don't trust the public education system to be teaching our second graders about sexual identity or about any of these other things. It is your responsibility as a parent to bring up certain things. What is really coming down to is Lilac talks about this multiple times where we're talking about from a perspective of a conservative, right? Since apparently the duelist and I might be the only ones here, and Doobie kind of just is whichever way the wind blows, right? From a perspective of a conservative, this is about rights, and this is about the fact that you have rights as a custodian or guardian of your children who are not developmentally able to express their will, right? And so the default position that you are taking by saying that this bill is bad is that the state has a right to regard that they have a right to determine what the will is, the expressed will, the consent, and all of these things of your children better than the parents do. And
Yeah.
conservatives are saying, fuck you, I'm a parent, don't be doing shit to my kid without me knowing.
I'll bite that bullet. I think that's
doing shit to the
actually
kid.
abuse. I think like there's certain aspects of society that like everyone needs to have a base level knowledge about. Like I think parents being able to opt out of like teaching their kids about the different types of sexuality is like almost not even necessarily because their kids are going to end up LGBT, but just like because they're at some point they're probably going to have to deal with these people, and saying that you can opt out of that, I think that like that may be a form of like child abuse, because I think you're not preparing them to deal with the very real world they're going to step into just because you as a parent want to like build up this shelter.
Let's go to Top
can I-
Dolphin and then Doobie. Top Dolphin, Doobie.
Yeah, so an issue I have with some of the arguments that we made is that you're saying that like a lot of times that like parents that kids by default have like a view of the world that like sort of educates them, like society kind of educates kids on like heterosexual relationships even as early as like K through 3. While I would be against this bill because I think we should have sex ed starting at kindergarten and like it should scale up, I don't think we necessarily teach in schools about like straight sexual orientation. We might talk about things that are taught by society, but I think what the bill would be like, the argument for the bill would be like straight relationships and gay relationships should be left to society until you're 3 years old, and then in third grade, which would be like 8 years old, and then we can start having those conversations in school. I don't like that idea. I think that like introducing this to kids as young as possible is probably good, as long as it's done in an age appropriate manner. I don't know why it has to be age appropriate at third grade and above, but not beforehand. But definitely, I don't think we teach children in school like this is how like straight relationships work or anything like that. I think it's like society teaches them by default and it's reinforced in schools, which would be like different.
Doobie.
I also think just like the thing. Sorry.
Yeah. So first to respond to kind of, I just add to what Top Dolphin was saying. So it is true that culturally, kids do kind of get this by default education about like cis het norms or whatever the fuck you want to call them, right? But there is currently like a massive overcorrection happening, where they can watch The Lion King and see Nala and Simba fuck, but then they could also watch The Eternals and see a gay guy with a husband and a kid, right? They can watch Cruella, see another gay character there. The New Beauty and the Beast, another gay character there, right? The Onward, another gay character there, right? When it's like fuck, like 4% of the population is gay, but you see they're everywhere in media. Right, so there's already currently a massive overcorrection happening on that end. They're going to be exposed to this if their parents choose to let them watch these movies, just as they'd be exposed to lion sex in The Lion King, okay? Secondly, Prime. So when there was all that hubbub, right, about the books in the libraries at elementary schools and shit, and about what this teacher in New York might be teaching these children, a lot of the what people were upset about wasn't just like gay sex and transness. It was about heterosexual sex. It was about the idea that teachers were teaching their young children about blowjobs and about eating out women and shit like that, right? And that this was in the books and this was in the classroom and yada yada yada, right? So I don't think there's any indication that parents are suddenly okay with it when their 8-year-olds are like talking about straight sex.
So let's be honest, right? Let's not try to fearmonger, and let's actually find sources. Were they teaching 6-year-olds about blowjobs? Was that what was happening?
No, I said
No.
a lot
Okay,
of
so we're not
what
worried
they
about
were
that.
upset about was the idea that this was happening.
The idea,
Right?
I know the idea. Yes,
Okay,
I'm sure.
Wait, listen.
These people are
So
terrified.
just as they were fear mongering back then about straight sex and gay sex, you're currently fear mongering about the evil cis hets who want to oppress the trans people. Right?
Okay.
No one's
So
saying you
parents
can't educate about
We're suddenly going to be
cisgender
okay with it
norms.
when their kids are learning about like straight sex when that's never been the case in any of these situations.
No, they weren't doing it, and they weren't doing it before. They're not doing it now, right? Like this is a bill born out of that fear you're talking about. Yes, that's true. It's born out of that fear, but how it'll be used is to squash anything. And I mean the bill says so. Anything talking about sexual orientation or gender identity, right? We can't have we can't have a structured discussion about this. Expand kids' minds, like what you would do in school, introduce them to these topics that, as Bam correctly pointed out, you were going to have to deal with, right? As a functioning human being, you're going to have to deal with this. So we can't actually do these things because of that fear you're talking about. When they weren't talking about like a blowjobs, right? They weren't talking about like anal sex, like sodomizing people. They weren't saying, "Hey kids," right? Like, "Hey little boys and little girls," right? Have you ever thought you were a girl? Like, have you ever thought you were the opposite gender, right? Well, maybe you should really think about that. Maybe, are you positive? Are you positive you aren't? You are a boy, that you are a girl, right? Maybe you should rethink that. None of that was happening. There weren't trans kids. None of that shit was happening, right?
So literally just scroll through libs of TikTok and you will see hundreds of fucking kindergarten
Let's
teachers
just trust
bragging about that shit.
Oh, bullshit,
the fuck
bullshit.
outta here.
Okay, I'm
10
actually...
second videos.
Yeah,
for
right,
an
yeah.
example.
Okay, yeah, whatever.
I'm gonna say all of
They
those.
might not be
Yeah.
doing it, but they're certainly bragging about it.
Okay, I
Second
really
videos
don't
on
believe
TikTok.
any of that. I don't believe in
Great one.
perspective on that, not at all, right? I'd actually have to have proof that there are actually instructions
Look
where
at
they're
these
trying to
memes,
trans the
bro.
kids, right? So like,
just
yeah,
telling
I
you.
But if it did,
acknowledge
you would
that
disagree
fear.
with it, right?
These
I acknowledge
memes I
that fear,
found, they're
Doopy,
killing
but
us.
like I say, it's unfounded, it's ridiculous. We should bend to it, and we are actively hurting our kids if we can't have the discussions in real life. Okay, I'm done.
Yeah, I think
Hey,
the
you're
important
like,
part of that is
God,
like
please.
we don't have to push back against each other's like bad straw mans about like is it dildos and trying to trans the kids, because if like even if those are happening, like because I think it's weird, it's bad to say like it's not happening, but if it is happening, then I think it would be bad. So that's not like so no one here in here would
I
think
don't buy
would
that.
be would
I
advocate
don't
for-
buy that some people on this panel think it would be bad if they were teaching first graders about dildos and shit. It's like, hey, are you sure? Are you really sure you're a boy? Are you really sure you're a girl? Hey, your friend over there, he thinks he's a boy, but next year he might think it's a girl, and that's okay. Little boy, it's okay if next year you think you're a girl.
Now some
I
people
don't- I
would
don't
think
think
it's
you guys
okay.
stand
Some
for
people are
this.
weird.
Here's the
I don't know
thing.
about this panel.
I don't think things like dildos have any place in the school. Okay, what I think is okay is
So brave.
saying, wait a minute, just rejecting like, hey, you don't have to fit into all of these stereotypes. That's fine. That's not saying anything about your identity, right? That's just saying be a kid.
Hey, real quick question: who here has kids?
Oh boy.
Who here has children?
Well, I mean,
Is it just me?
Appeal to
I've
authority.
kidnapped a few.
Educated children.
yeah, appeal to authority.
Pretty much.
I'm just curious. I just curious if any of you had
Every
these,
single
like, crazy.
time
You'll find
None-
that's
none
a
of them
great
aware.
question. Cosmology stuff.
happens. Who here has kids? Who
Yeah, right?
here
Like,
has kids?
Who here
It's
has
a PrimeCayes panel.
Should I
Like we haven't
police every
fucking,
dude who
like we
talks about
haven't done
abortion now? Who here has a
identity-based
vagina?
fucking
Who here
panels.
has a vagina? You can't
Like
talk about
PrimeCayes
this
doesn't do
unless you
all
have a
People
black
do
vagina.
that.
everything on
Hey,
purpose, right?
that's the
Where
best
white people
panel, baby.
aren't allowed to
Check
us
have
out
those
Thursday.
discussions
Check us
for
out
black
Thursdays.
people. Right? All right.
You
All
know,
black everything on Thursdays. You should check it out. But all I'm saying is, I'm the only one here with fucking kids. And it's kind of fucking interesting that all you people don't give a fuck about parental rights. It's real
Well, I think
fucking
it's because
interesting.
I think you're just a
wait, I think
conservative.
you're a
Doobie
representative sample
doesn't
of the
have sex with
parents,
condoms. He probably has kids somewhere. All right, so put that.
None
out
that I'm
there.
aware of currently. Okay.
Whole other box.
All right. Point still stands.
Scott, you'll forgive me if I think your sample size of 1 is a bit low, but
I'm
I
just saying,
appreciate
none of you
Doobie
have
for-
skin in the game. None of you do.
Okay,
Except for me.
that's okay. That's you're one person. Okay, I don't give a
You
fuck.
don't have a
So,
vagina.
Doobie,
Pull
you're
out
talking-
game
Never
week.
speak
I
on
actually,
female
I
topics
actually,
again.
I actually appreciate that Doobie kind of like is highlighting the paranoia that went into this bill, because if you look at what people who have been backing this bill are saying, DeSantis saying, I don't want schools to be a playground for ideological disputes. The bill addresses sexual stuff, telling kids they may be able to pick genders and all that. Christina Pushaw calling it the anti-grooming bill. Garcia saying gay is not a permanent thing. Yeah, this bill is, people don't have a fucking idea what they're talking about. That's why they're doing this.
No, I don't. I
Although,
don't think.
If
Wait,
you've
hold on,
never
but I
been
think.
a
I think. Oh,
kid,
God.
if you've never been a kid, you better not fucking talk about this topic, okay? How
Jesus
fucking
Christ.
dare you ever think that you can talk about this if you've never been a child?
Well,
Unbelievable.
be quiet
Loner-
so that
Lonerbox.
Doobie can speak because he's
Lonerbox,
only ever
I
been
think-
a tadpole.
Oh God. So Lonerbox, I think what's built into what you just said is the implication that this paranoia is like coming from nowhere, right? Like some of it isn't warranted and like reasonable, because there are tons of activists, LGBTQIA, whatever the fuck you want to call activists, who will advocate for it, specifically that, who will advocate for children being encouraged to question their gender identity. Right, who don't just like to go on TikTok. They'll go and make speeches at the city council and in front of legislators about this and push these bills and try to push this shit through like a law. Right, so yeah, some of the response to that is going to be paranoia. It's going to be unreasonable, but it's not coming from nowhere. There are crazy ass people on the side of this movement, right, who do push shit like this.
Okay, I agree. I'm sure they are. Yeah, I don't doubt that at all. That's why I would say it'd probably be useful to have like some kind of curriculum or some kind of lesson plan where kids are taught about this stuff in a responsible way, because I'm not like 12 years old. I don't think the state or whatever is like a boogeyman. I think like, yeah, there are some things that the education system actually does a pretty good job at. And I think actually like a reasonable lesson plan that isn't forcibly transing kids, but that also isn't like some crazy like dad who thinks like being gay makes you the devil or something. Yeah. That's
Okay,
why
so I think it's
this
really
bill
interesting.
is using one thing to target another thing. That's my problem.
I think it's really interesting that given how often people on this panel, some of the people that I've actually heard this before from you guys, and people in like lefty spaces on Twitch, even like right wing spaces on the internet or whatever, will shit talk the public education system, right? And their faith in it, and how all these kids come out of schools not knowing how to read and write and all this kind of shit, right? But suddenly you trust the same institution, the same fucked up system to teach fucking 8-year-olds and 7-year-olds about gender issues that adults have trouble contending with. It seems so fucking batshit crazy to me.
Has to
But I
be-
feel like
The
adults
education
handle
agency-
it at like
I
adult
actually
level.
think-
Just right now,
I
do
don't
you
like
not
the
address
better-
what I'm saying?
Maybe
The-
if those
the
adults
stuff
had been
that's gonna
taught
be
as
school-
children, they wouldn't be so fucking brain dead today.
No,
Like,
because
I-
all this is
I
up for
think
debate.
that
It's
if-
not like a settled fucking science.
wait,
You can just
there
say, hey,
are
this is what it is.
absolutely
I
parts of it
understand
are
that there is
debate,
a
but there
way
are
to
very
teach-
Wait,
There's
there
a
are
way
things
to
that-
teach children that they don't need to adhere to every stereotype and every norm without teaching them about the complexities of gender and gender theory. There's a way to say that, sure, we can improve the curriculum in some places, but I still don't trust majority of like parents to even broach this subject with their children.
Wait, hold on. So
Yeah.
These
Or,
are
like,
important
wait,
things
real
to
quick,
be.
a very
so
simple
why
thing
why
is-
so rather than worry about schools reinforcing gender stereotypes, why not just have them not talk about gender issues at all when these are like 5 to 8 year olds? Oh shit,
I'm
that's
so
what it's
curious what Top Dolphin was gonna say.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's like some really simple and like easy ways that we could talk to children about how like things happen in the world. So like an example is like children probably are gonna come across like gay people, trans people, stuff like this, straight people in the world, and saying, hey, these people exist, right? And here's some of the ways they like to be addressed, or here's some of the ways that they like to be treated. Not even being like, hey, this is something that's an option for you, but saying, hey, these are things that exist in the world. It's probably education that could probably happen and should probably happen for children at a very young age. When you talk about like educating kids in a responsible way, it doesn't be like, oh yeah, like there's some like dudes who like to fuck dudes. Like you're not telling that the third graders, but like you can have responsible conversations about the world that children engage in educational settings.
Also, Doobie, like something you said that would be like conservatives would be so against the concept, which myself too actually would be against the concept of like schools being like gender neutral. Like they're not boys and girls, they're just students. Like there's a lot of people who do advocate for like the genderless education, but conservatives push back against that heavy. They don't want genderless
Well,
education.
then, hey, I guess. Well, hold on. I didn't push for genderless education. I said from 5 years old to 8 years old, you don't talk about gender norms and gender stereotypes and all this kind of shit in the classroom.
So genderless education,
which is exactly what this bill pushes.
Doobie, does that mean you're
exactly
kind
what
of
it
like, okay, Doobie, so wait, Doobie, two questions. First of all, you probably agree that by default, kids will learn about the straight gender ideology and the het norm, like they'll just learn that by default, right?
Because that's probably what they are, right?
Okay.
But I think we should acknowledge that there's a massive overcorrection right now in the media, right, in entertainment to represent gay and trans people. Right?
absolutely,
So probably gonna
that's
be exposed to
absolutely
that
true.
too.
People saying that's
Okay,
not true is lying to yourself.
I just
That's
want to
absolutely
ask
true.
you-
It's not a bad
question,
thing.
Doobie, I just want to ask you my second question. So my second question was, okay, if by default kids get the heteronormative, whatever, like default thing, then doesn't that mean if you're against the lesson plan, I don't think a lesson plan for 5 to 8 year olds when kids are already learning about straight stuff is an overcorrection, right? That would just be like equality, right?
Wait, but they're not learning about the straight stuff at school, right? They're learning it from
my
whatever
point is-
wait, hold on, whatever entertainment, whatever media, whatever culture they're being exposed to at home and when they're driving down the street, whatever the fuck. So if their parents choose to introduce their children to the gay character that Disney has in Beauty and the Beast or Onward or whatever the fuck else, right? That's totally the parents' decision. If they choose to show them the Lion King and explain these two lions fucking, that's totally the parents' decision, right?
You
More
can't
bestiality
compare.
in schools.
No, you
My
can't
point
compare heteronormativity to a lesson plan. You cannot talk and just say, "Oh, well, they're learning through osmosis in the culture that men and women tend to be together, and that there's such a thing as a husband and a wife, and they may or may not, depending on how sheltered the parents are, not learn about gay relationships because apparently their parents lock them in a fucking room and don't let them ever watch TV because it's fucking everywhere anyways." But assuming that heteronormativity has this large influence, what you're talking about is lesson plans meant to combat heteronormativity. You're talking about lesson plans. Yes, don't give me that look, because we're not talking about lesson plans talking about man and wife and sex and about like what it means to be straight. None of that shit's occurring, right? So the only thing you can be talking about is trying to influence children and open their minds at a very young age to these other possibilities that we've already shown PrimeCayes with his own floundering adults have difficulty contending with. And it's absurd to think that that a teacher should be responsible for creating lesson plans around sexual identity and shit. If you have, let me tell you this real quick. If you have a kindergartner that's running around constantly talking about sexual identity and shit, I have concerns for that child. Because something weird is going on in their life.
This is so disingenuous.
Go get the kitty.
There's such an easy, like you walk into a school and this kid has two dads or two moms, right? And he talks about my dad and my other dad. Like it's technically by like walking around talking about like sexuality in the school, and to think that like teachers can't have like discussions about this is like crazy.
Like, you're misunderstanding the bill.
This is parts of the world. No, to think that not that only that teachers can't have discussions about this, but that teachers shouldn't be able to plan lessons to educate children about things that are in the world and that they are going to interact with. Because like Fabian,
it's fucking crazy. Teach them math and let the parents teach their fucking children before they're in 3rd grade about the fact that Tommy has two dads.
You
I'm
think we
just
should be
really
teaching
curious.
children
Why
about
is
like the
same
Holocaust?
concept.
I think we should be teaching
no,
like 5
I
and 6 year olds
disagree.
about the Holocaust and about the generocide in Rwanda. Like that's some
Maybe.
some of these some things that people are going to learn and
educational
interact
manner.
with.
When
Yeah,
I was in
some
fucking
so wait,
first
hold on.
grade, we
Some
learned
things.
about
Oh, God.
slavery. Why can't we
Some
teach them
things
about
people are going to
fucking
interact with in their lives, right?
probably
Children see
are not-
violence on TV all the
are not-
time. I don't
first
see what
grade
the difference is.
Holocaust? You could probably say there was a man in Germany like a long time ago, or 50, 60, I don't even know how many years ago it was.
It's a long
There was
time
a man
ago,
in
they did.
Germany who like who thought that some people were lesser than other people, and he started a war over it, and it was really bad. That's a conversation you can have for the first grader. Like you can, there are ways you can talk about things that, when you talk about them as adults, are really scary and might be really like graphic, but you can tone them down for children so they can understand things. Like,
It's a whole subreddit
1941.
called
the
Explain It
idea
Like
that
I'm
if you want
Five.
to talk about the Holocaust, you have to talk
In
about how
19
Jew,
yeah,
like
in
how Hitler was
1941.
graphically
Really-
murdering
really
Jews in
about
camps is like just
Yeah.
insane.
In 1941, some people did some things.
So,
here's-
Lilac.
I have
just-
here's my question is, it seems like Doobie and Scott have brought up some very specific concerns. So you have concerns over persuasive teaching, the use of sex toys as educational aids. Why can't you make a law that is narrow and specific instead of just, why does it need to be so broad? And other than just to use it as a bludgeon for anything that scares people, that says, oh, they said something that wasn't completely straight. Like, because under this law, I could see someone saying, okay, you have a story that happens to have parents, and they're a man and a woman. No one's going to complain about that. It's not going to go home. Kids are going to talk about that. But you happen to have a story where the parents are two moms or two dads, and now the kids talk about that, the parents complain, and that's a problem. Like, that's not the same as these edge cases, but this bill includes that. Why does the bill need to include that?
Because it's designed in such a way for local school boards to be able to craft policies that are more specific for their
Why does
district
the
and
school
their
board
community.
need to have such a broad policy?
Because I don't know what to say other than that's what conservatives tend to believe, is that it's better for local communities to create rules and legislation and police their own communities, and they don't like top-down authority. So conservative bills tend to be more vague because they prefer that the local school district deal with crafting the policy for what is good for their community.
Well, it's not just that. There's also the reality of like conservative communities don't want to teach about LGBT issues because there seems to be some overlap between learning about the existence of other options for things you can do and like later in life people choosing those other options.
Yeah,
I
it'll
think-
be easier. It'll be easier for a Miami school, right, to have something that's less strict in the way that it drafts the policy, and like a country school way out in the boonies, right? They're going to have different communities. They're going to have different values. They're going to have different ideas of what is developmentally appropriate and what isn't developmentally appropriate.
What sucks is LGBT children are going to be in one of these places.
Yeah, I don't even like the framing that like conservative fans don't want to teach their kids about LGBTQ stuff, right? Like, they probably don't. But conservative parents want to go way farther than that, which is kind of what this bill does. They want to lock up all of sexuality in a closet, and they want to pretend it doesn't exist until their children turn 18. And then when their kid turns up at like 15 and is pregnant, they want to pretend like they're like, oh, this could never happen to my children. I don't understand what went wrong, right? They just don't want to educate children in the places that children need to be educated. And this bill is like an example. And like, I'm actually not against all of the stuff in the bill. I think there's a little bit of ambiguity with the informing parents about certain things that like should probably be a little bit stricter. And I don't like the blanket ban on things from K through 3. But like in general, I think that parents and teachers should probably communicate to parents what's happening to their children in school. In general, there's probably some edge
But
cases.
should I
in general,
cancel my
thing.
Disney Plus subscription?
Should you cancel? Yes, because Disney Plus
just because the platform crashed.
Not because
I
they're
just
too
wanna
woke,
say-
but because they ruin things. They ruin good
I
things.
think I get the impression that you're misrepresenting the language of this bill, because a lot of this bill specifies this is the law that the local schools are required to adhere to. There's a lot of must, there's a lot of may not. Rules or laws that are put in place for school boards to develop policy that is free and of their choosing use things like they may adopt this policy, they may implement practices. These are requirements. So what it seems like will happen isn't that rural schools, Republican conservative schools are going to have the option to not teach things they don't want to, but schools that choose to teach things that the local schools make the local choice to teach about same-sex education, abuse, consent, boundaries. If they make that choice, they will be punished by this law. So it's not an open law, it's a closed one. It's restricting what people are allowed to do.
Restricted on
Loaner
K
box.
through
Hold on,
3.
we got a minute time left. Loaner box.
But that's just not
We
true.
have
to learn
loaner
just wanted
box.
to-
We'll get back
I just
to
wanted
you.
to summarize the concerns of like both Doobie and Scott. First of all, Doobie, I feel like you're just being really obtuse about my point when it comes to like the fact that cishet kids are covered by society. That's the point. They're already covered. And that's why I'm sorry, I just don't think, you were talking about overcorrecting, right? I don't think it's overcorrecting to have like one lesson in the year about the fact that gay kids exist as well and it's cool. Like, I'm sorry, for like that's not overcorrecting, that's just correcting.
I thought you were talking
It's
about
not because
media.
you weren't paying
As for-
attention to
as
anything
for-
I said. If
as
that's what you
for-
think.
I
the
was, you were
response
just
was.
completely dodging my point. And
No,
anyway,
not at all.
Scott, you were saying something about combating heteronormativity. I'm sorry, like don't be so fucking fragile. Heteronormativity is not being combated by one lesson a year about gay people. I'm sorry.
Okay. So
God, I
I don't know where you
wish.
came up. I
Cool.
don't know where you came up with this one lesson here. First off, but secondly, so what I said, right? Because you were saying, hey, they're learning cishet shit in the culture. Right? My response to that wasn't that there's an overcorrection in the school with one lesson a year. The response to that was, hey, they're also learning about gay people and about trans people and about genderqueer people if their parents choose to expose them to that media, right? Which is every fucking where. Right, and that is a massive overcorrection I'm talking about. Trans people are like what, less than 1% of the population. Gay people are like what, 4% of the population. But every fucking Disney remake has a gay or a trans character, right? So the fact that so you're saying that hey, they're learning this stuff in the culture, the cishet shit by default, and they're not learning the other shit. That doesn't make any sense. Maybe that was true 30 years ago, but right now, right, there are plenty of options out there that children are gonna interact with if they're on YouTube, if they're watching Sunday morning cartoons, if they're watching the latest Disney shit, they're gonna see gay people, they're gonna see trans people.
Is that the same as learning about them in a structured environment?
Wait,
No, but they're also
totally agree with Doobie here, and I bet Fabian can probably like attest to this. Being a parent, right? I'm gonna appeal to that a little bit. Like if you talk to kids these days, they're absolutely exposed to like this stuff. Now the level of it, depending on where you live, is different. But like it like if you go like don't go into a school unless you're like volunteering or something, like that'd be weird. But if you happen to come across children and talk to children who are like even as early as like 7 or 8 or 6, they talk about this stuff. They know way more about this stuff than you or I did when we were growing up. And the fact that they're exposed to this stuff every day is even stronger argument that we should have teachers and children, like teachers having controlled, structured discussions with their children about this.
Why?
Instead
This
of
is
them
the
getting
crux.
their lesson from Disney, which is an entertainment platform.
Why do you
they
have
can get
so
it
much
from an
disgust
instructional
and I just don't understand how you
environment.
people have so much trust in like the state, especially when the state is given express permission to hide information from parents.
What is the
That's the
state
issue
going
this
to
bill
do? What
is
are we not
doing.
trusting them to do?
I
What's the worst case
understand.
scenario? I'm just curious.
Your
What
kids
is the
spend how
absolute?
many
What's the state
hours
gonna
a day
do?
with their teachers?
What's that?
Look,
No,
How
I'm,
many
I
hours a
don't
day do your kids
understand.
spend with their teachers?
It's
Are the
but-
teachers not the guardians during that time?
Yes, but why do they have the express permission to do things with your children and not tell you? Why is that the default position?
I feel like you were also
understand-
like in favor of creationists. Like you think that like kids shouldn't have to learn about the like the concept of planets
What?
and the Big Bang.
Why
Like the
would-
creation.
Why would I be a young Earth creationist? Like, what are you talking about?
But because this is the exact same argument parents made. Like, oh, like parents have a right to educate the kids how they see fit. So like
This is
kids,
really
children
dumb.
can opt out from being in schools related to like the Big Bang or creationists or like the concept of other planets.
What if
No,
you decide
this is
that
about
geometry is
teaching. This is
inappropriate for your child to
this is
learn?
this is about teaching specific things to children that parents don't want versus creation. Like I'm so
I'm
utterly
saying that
confused.
both of those things are things
You're
that
comparing the idea of kindergartners being taught about sexuality and the parents not having the ability to stop it versus young Earth creationists being upset about the fact that they teach evolution in schools. You're saying those things are the same?
Yes,
'Cause if
I'm saying that
so,
those are the same.
It's plainly obvious that you don't have children.
You just think that one of those things are crazy
not
and the
an
other
argument.
things not. But I'm saying that those things are the same. I'm saying that like
They're not the
Yeah, but-
same. One is potentially abusive and harmful, and the other one's just dumb.
To add on to that, like,
I don't know which is which in that situation.
I don't
A
live
child
in the
that is
US.
already going.
When I
Wait a
look
minute,
at
guys.
your,
To take a child that's already going to be exposed to sexuality way earlier than they can even realize, right? Because we see young people sexualized in the media every fucking day. So to take a child who's already going to be experiencing that, exposed to whatever boy band, exposed to whatever, preteen pop star that's being sexualized by the media, and then not give them some form of education at the very ages where they're going to be idolizing those people, I think is irresponsible.
I mean, it's okay for them not to understand, what it means when this chick sings like about her wet ass pussy or whatever the fuck, right? I'm okay with them not understanding, a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old not understanding what the fuck that means.
16-year-old pop stars.
Okay, that's fine, right? But I think I don't understand like the anger over like this not being taught to 5 to 8-year-olds, right? I could understand if this was like through all the way through high school, right? But 5 to 8, they're not even going through puberty yet. They're still like a few years away from puberty.
So
they're not even grappling with these things themselves.
Maybe
their parents don't expose them. Maybe their parents don't expose them to over sexualized pop stars. I think it is the norm. I think most parents are going to show their children. I think most parents are going to show their 5-year-olds over sexualized pop stars.
Disney pop star, they are being sexualized.
Who do you think Justin Bieber's fan base was? Justin Bieber's fan base was like.
You think his fan base was 5 to 8-year-olds?
Wait, little kids.
You're saying a lady killer. Like we sexualize kids from the get-go.
So we sexualize children in pop, so that's why we have to educate kindergartners and first graders on sexual identity.
Sexual identity is carried to a lot,
right? There's a difference between teaching about like sexualization and sexual identity, right? Like teaching kids at from K through 3 that like people can be gay is probably way different than teaching kids like, oh yeah, like this is what happens when you put pop stars and exposed clothing on TV, right? We probably wouldn't have the second conversation with the K through.
Why are you guys so concerned with teaching children who are years away from their own puberty and grappling with their own sexuality? Why are you so concerned, so convinced that you need to force this upon them and force them to have this discussion in school?
Okay, do y'all remember that commercial?
Start puberty around the age 9 and 10.
I'll just leave it at this.
Years after this,
around 9 and 10, right?
I don't know why you keep making it about
wait a minute. It's not an irrelevant point that maybe they should be taught a few years before then what to expect, right? It's not that crazy.
I'm just saying.
I'm gonna give you the last word.
I'll just leave it at this, and then I'll just not talk until closing statements, and you guys can totally have the
literally 2 minutes away.
These are my. Well, I mean, it often goes late. I didn't realize it was that late, but anyways, these are my children that you think the state has the right to teach to and not inform, and that the state can teach them whatever they want, and that it's the state's responsibility to teach them right and wrong. It's the state's responsibility to give them moral instruction. It's the state's responsibility to instruct them on sexuality and everything from the most young age. And if my children happen to express an opinion that I don't agree with, or happen to express some form of identity, it's your choice. It's the state's choice what to do with my children, and they don't have to inform me at all. So here's the hard line: stay the fuck away from my children.
Got it. Now, have any of y'all seen that interesting commercial? Like it was a joke commercial, but it was like they were using letters. It's like a word with the letter L. He was like lesbian, and they was like, it's when you like Olivia. It's like when you like someone. He's like, I like Olivia. Am I a lesbian? He's like, maybe, and she's like, I like Olivia. And then oh my God, have y'all not seen this commercial? This commercial was hilarious, but it was like really, it was like dealing with 5-year-olds, and the concept was like, okay, I heard this word before. I have no idea what it means, and I'm gonna ask, because that's what kids do. Kids bring things up because they don't know what's inappropriate or not. And now we have to be able to deal with this somehow. And it could create an uncomfortable situation if we don't have any curriculum or plan in place for how to deal with this. And it doesn't have to be he didn't go in depth. Like I said, he's like, what does lesbian mean? It's when you the girl. And she was like, oh, okay. And they just went on about it. and then the next word was like crack whore. But it's still a funny commercial.
Find that commercial. That sounds like a lot of fun. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Look.
So
Go
I
ahead.
just want to like talk about something that Fabian said really quick, and he said that like he's like, oh, you guys don't want like parents in charge of like what their children learn in school. First I want to say that absolutely parents should know what their children are learning in school. That should be something that happens. But two, I do not want parents in control over what children learn in school, because if it was up to conservative parents, we wouldn't even teach kids about periods in like 6th grade. We wouldn't be teaching kids that condoms exist. We wouldn't be teaching kids about STDs in school. Like the education we would be getting, especially when it comes to like sex ed, would be like abstinence only education, which I am vehemently against. So yes, I don't want. And the number of parents who are against like fucking Common Core and shit like that because they couldn't understand how they were teaching the kids math. Like it's absolutely ridiculous to think parents have like the wherewithal to decide what the children can and can't learn in school. Now, should they be informed on it? Absolutely. And I think that if we were to revise this bill and make it purely on educating children, parents on like what teachers were teaching children, educating parents on what teachers were teaching their children in school. And I think there's some arguments that could be made about parents being educated on things having to do with children's emotional, mental, and health and stuff like that. If you do it correctly, I think it's like worded a little bit weirdly, but like these are things that absolutely should happen. Like if you're like having a social worker intervene with your children while they're in school, if you have to like change like the way you like treat children in school, there should probably be some intervention by the parents, or if parents aren't apt, like the state should be coming in.
I think this weird like caricature that you're making of conservative parents is like disgusting, right? I could say the same shit. Oh well, progressive parents just want your kids to learn about BDSM and spanking each other in the 5th grade. They think it's totally fine for kids to learn about using lube before they do anal at 9 years old, right? So that's a caricature. It's not real.
No,
right?
there have
Most-
been court
most-
cases about teaching
most-
creationism in schools.
Okay, and a lot of people who are pushing the creationism shit were Democrats, were religious Democrats.
Well, I didn't
That
agree with them
wasn't just-
either.
That wasn't just Republicans, the evil Republicans that were doing this. In fact, lots of Democrats support abstinence-only education. Right, so don't stop making these fucking caricatures of conservatives and Republicans as if they're like fucking brain dead cavemen. Right, this is a very complex issue. When you boil it down, like it's so black and white, you lose all the use that could come from discussing these things.
Listen,
Okay.
Doobie, my centrist friend, you've just made a very good case for why the education system should provide like a moderate perspective on this for the kids.
Okay. So, thanks so much. This was spirited. The first topic was a bit slow. The second topic, oh boy. But it's social issues set people off, right? And people can make rational decisions when talking about sensitive social issues. Easy, right? Great. So thank you all. Thank you all. We will continue on to our open walk-on panel right after this, right? We have more content for you. Don't go away. More content for you. And a lot of you are going to want to fucking argue about this. About exactly this. I see you in chat. You guys don't want to argue about it. It's okay. We'll do it. All right? Fine. And there's lots of directions we can take this. So stick around for that. I'm going to give an outro to all these amazing individuals. And we'll go from there. You should follow us on social media. We got lots of it, right? We got your Twitter, where we tweet. Discord, Heart and Soul of the community, right? The Open Walk On panel will be on Discord. Everything we do is on Discord. So be a part of our Discord community. YouTube, so we find the VODs. Like, comment, and subscribe because it become YouTube. Remember hitting that join button, supporting us that way. And hit that follow button. If you haven't done so yet, follow this channel. We are always producing content like this, right? It's a lot of fun, I think. So hit that follow button. One last thing, guys, I'm gonna have a channel update right after this, right? So stick around for that. If you don't listen to channel update, you're gonna be highly confused as to what's going on. So, stick around for that. I don't do that very often, so keep track. All right, so we'll start with Black American Made. Black American Made. His name's also apparently it's Bam, right?
Who's Bam? I only know Black American Made.
He's been having me call him this long ass motherfucking name. Like,
I clarify always. I feel like I always clarify. I even have it in parentheses. Like it should
be Bam, and then in parentheses, Black American. Okay.
Okay. Looking at you, trying to control me and how I do my name. I'm whatever I want to be. I don't care. This is what I learned in K through 8th, 3rd grade, that I can be whatever I want to be. So today I'm Black American made. Tomorrow I might be Bam, and Fabian has a problem with that. Yeah, no. Interesting panel. This is actually this is one of the pushier panels I've been on. Like usually I can like exude my dominance, which I still did. Don't get me wrong. You all were thoroughly dominated, but I had to do it in small spurts. So this was like fun. A lot of good people. Yeah. Like I said, follow my stuff and bring me on your other panels. Thanks.
Yeah. Anyone else? Seriously, like hit up Black McMahon. I hit this guy up like a lot, right? Because I like having him around, right? Like I need an easy punching bag. But but Bam, we love you. Seriously, you're a great individual, and people like hit him up. All right, let's go to Scott. Scott, thank you. I also bring you on.
Come on, Doobie can't be the only one with spicy takes on your panel.
Absolutely not, apparently. No, despite the fact that I constantly find myself vehemently disagreeing with you, I do appreciate you coming on and sharing those opinions one way or the other, right? Coming into
always
enemy territory, So thanks so much.
So I'm not sure what to say about rainbow capitalism. I still don't know whether or not I'm supposed to cancel my Disney Plus subscription. So I don't know, man. I don't know where we got on this. But yeah, Fabian Liberty, duo stream anarcho-capitalist content, do a lot of debates, but we do a lot of news reactions and things like that. Serial killer night tomorrow night. So if you want to watch me cringe because you hated me so badly tonight, you can check that out. But thanks for having me again, PrimeCayes.
Thank you. Next, we have Top Dolphin. We're a little quiet today, right? But still, we bring on Top Dolphin because he's got great takes when he opens his mouth. Top Dolphin, thank you for being around. Tell a little about yourself.
Yeah, the first topic wasn't something I was like super passionate about, but I love education. But I had to read the bill first. That's why I like didn't talk, because I was reading through the bill. But yeah, thanks for having me. My name's Top Dolphin. I love having all the individuals here. It's always nice to see people like Doobie and Stardust and Bam. These are great people, and you should all like go follow their shit because they're awesome and they put out amazing content. I thought it was kind of crazy. I never thought I'd see a libertarian talking about more restricting educational freedom for children. Like, that was kind of crazy. And by the way, you should absolutely cancel your Disney Plus subscription because they ruined the Artemis Fowl movie, and that was an assault as bad as M. Night Shyamalan ruining like Avatar: The Last Airbender. So we should just cancel Disney Plus and nobody should ever pay for it again.
Wow. Okay. Well,
but not because they're too woke. That would be stupid.
So, guys, to be fair, I didn't give you like the text of the bill, whether the old or the new, because it wasn't about.
It wasn't about the bill. Yeah, that's why I wasn't ready for that. I was like, I think
we only talked about the bill because I said I liked it.
Like, I worked nights, so I was like sleeping all day, and I like prepped, and I was like, okay, let me like the bill. I was like, oh, the bill doesn't seem important. We're not going to talk about that. Like, and like, so I started writing stuff down, and then I was like, oh shit, this is like, we're just going to talk about this bill. Let me read this really quick.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's cool. Thank you, Lilac, who did read the bill, right? Who came super prepared. Seriously, Lilac, it was very nice meeting you. I like having you around. You got like a clear, strong voice. Right, and I love that. We're going to be hitting you up again in the future, right? Like, I'm gonna be bothering you the way I bothered Bam and Top Dolphin all the goddamn time, right? So Lilac, thank you so much, and tell a little about yourself.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I had a great time. I love doing this kind of stuff. My name is Lilac Doll, and yes, I am an adult content creator on Twitch. I play music, and I also sometimes get into arguments over there too. So as long as you're nice, I'll play a game. I'm game. Words. Anyway, you can find me on here. I also co-host a podcast with Mad Latin. It is called You Might Like This, where we educate each other about things that we are interested in. So definitely go check that out. And that's it for me again. Had a great time. This is awesome.
Great. Doobie and Scott have not scared her off, right? So that means she must be tough, right? Okay. So thank you so much. We have Stardust. Stardust is a born fighter, all right? Like, she was born in Twitch politics, right? She hadn't seen the sun, right? Until she was 20. Thank you for being here, Stardust.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Please continue to have me. And I like everybody here, despite I may call people names sometimes, but it's all in good fun. So, please don't take it personally, especially to discount Mario Brother. I'm sorry, but I had a whole list of things. So, anyways, yeah, thank you for having me. I'm Stardust, twitch.tv/Stardust. I do politics. I discuss stuff, do research, prepare for debates, things like that. And I have fun on panels. Every Saturday, I run a panel called Chaos Cast, where it's very absurd and it's not necessarily political, but I try to throw off the panelists as much as possible and make them feel really, really uncomfortable. Yeah, so.
Sissy, Stardust, thank you for joining
Also,
us.
frick all of you.
Okay, never mind.
Frick you too.
I was gonna drop a compliment on her, but moving on. Let's go to the Duelist, who again, first time that we've had them on the Reverie, and not gonna be last time. I really did enjoy having you here. Yeah, thank you for spending a bit of time and sharing your perspective, right? And being wrong on some things. It's cool to be wrong on the internet. So the Duelist, tell a little about yourself. Beautiful. Wow. So poetic, this man. This guy.
Oh my
truly.
god. I
A
was
wordsmith.
muted.
Oh.
I just went off on a tangent about how you called me wrong and nobody else. That's what you remember me for? That's okay, Prime. Okay.
You called the bill progressive.
No, it is what it is. No, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, I play video games. Please don't go to my channel and follow me and do political stuff. But yeah, it's super fun coming on here. Thanks for having me. I'll probably do more in the future. It's usually good fun, but I am a Brit bonger. Sometimes it's quite late at night. And that's why when I read this bill and I was like, huh, American schooling, you guys have teachers over there that don't even want to teach evolution. Do I want them teaching my 5 to 8-year-old kids sexual orientation and gender norms? Probably not. But yeah, that's my first reading of it.
Fair enough. I'll give you that. Thank you so much, though. Seriously. We also had Lauren Box, who is like a lot of fun. He's a funny guy, and I definitely enjoyed having him here. Again, we'll reach out to Lauren Box again in the future, if they'd be so kind as to come back. Lauren Box, tell a little about yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Of course, I'll come back. Yeah, I feel like with the issue about sexual identity is just that people always like to stress that word sexual, but just when it comes to gay kids, being gay isn't just about sex. It's also about who you feel affection for. It's about who you love. And it turns out that actually kids as young as 5, I've worked in the education system, and kids as young as that age actually do start to identify in ways in those kind of ways very, very early. So it's just, yeah, it's nice to have the odd lesson here and there to let them know they're in a supportive environment. Can't see who it hurts apart from dipshit fucking homophobes or whatever. Yeah, I'm Lonerbox. I do YouTube videos and debate on Twitch. I'm almost at 100K, so if you have 5,000 friends, get them to subscribe. Otherwise, fuck you.
Okay, that's on Twitch or on YouTube, where you're almost at 100K. YouTube. Please put your channel link there so people can hit you up. I don't think I'm subscribed yet, so I'll do that. All right. Next we'll go to Doobie. Oh my god. Dark Lord and Savior. Doobie, thank you for coming through. Driving me up the fucking wall. That's your job, and you do it well. Doobie, seriously, though, I appreciate you spending so much time in this community. It does mean a lot.
Yeah, fuck you. So I'm Doobie. I have run the politics server on Discord, the best and biggest politics server on the platform. Discord.gg/politics. Find me there if you'd like to, tell me why we should teach 5-year-olds about the anal loop. I guess we'll have that discussion.
All right. Well. This is why I should really think harder about who I invite on my channel. All right. Moving on. So we are going to continue on to our open walk-on panel right after this. Right. Before that, we'll actually have a channel update. But we'll have an open panel. Right. Anyone here is welcome to join us. But if not, that's okay. Thanks for spending your time, your energy, your knowledge, and your passion. My community, I know they appreciate just as much as I do. Have a good one. Bye.